Kate Mulefalcha. Welcome. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen, and welcome to my obviously extremely literate friend, Gerald.
Hello. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, it's so much fun to laugh, Gerald, and I feel
Yes.
better already. Thank you.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
Gerald and I thought we would just have a lighthearted, fun little conversation. I've been busy telling him all these stories I know of great Hollywood murders. And there are a lot of them.
I've been telling him these great stories.
Well, I love a good mystery. There's something
Yes.
mentally titillating about, don't you love that word, titillating?
It's
About,
a beautiful word. Yes.
There's something about a mystery, an unsolved mystery. When I was a kid, I just loved Agatha Christie.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I went through a period about 2014 when I started to exercise. That dirty word, yeah. And I had to dissociate because it's just so unpleasant for me. I don't like to sweat. And I sunburn really easily. You know, in the summertime, I always look like I'm embarrassed because I'm bright red. And it's just painful for many reasons.
Yeah.
So I started listening to books, audiobooks. And that really did help to sort of remove me from the suffering.
Yes.
And then, they got rid of iPods. It was the saddest day of my life.
I know. It's like,
I don't know why. I do know why, because then they can charge you more money.
yes.
So
I was going, oh, Helen, don't lie. We all know why.
So I eventually discovered podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on this wonderful journey of discovery of true crime podcasts, of which there are a gazillion, and they're wonderful. You know which one I started out listening to was Maura Murray. It's called Missing Maura Murray. Does that ring a bell?
No.
Shall I tell you very briefly the story?
Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah.
Then you have to tell me a story because I don't want to be the one just talking. So, okay. Maura Murray, I want to say, and my details will be shaky, but that'll get you to listen to the podcast. So 2004, 2007, sometime around there, I think 2004, she was a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And one snowy weekend, she called in sick to all her classes and packed a few odds and ends. She brought her textbooks. She brought her birth control pills. She stopped off and went to a liquor store and stocked up on alcohol.
Okay.
And drove her decrepit car that she was in the business of trying to replace and had no luck yet. Her father had come, they'd shopped, and took off in her car to points unknown. This is, before a lot of access to cell phones and
Sure. Oh, of course. Yeah.
So they know that she actually called ahead to a kind of a ski resort, hiking resort place, and this is all East Coast, I want to say New Hampshire, that she'd been to with her family, and no reservations were made. Nobody knows how the conversation went because nobody ever talked to that place until months later, and nobody could remember. Yeah. So long story short, she ostensibly got in a one-car wreck with a tree in a dark, very isolated country road, and disappeared. And it's a really interesting story. For years, people tried to make all sorts of connections to things that had happened in the days previous to the accident. She had started out as this champion long-distance runner. She's very athletic, and followed on her sister's heels and went to West Point. And her sister excelled at West Point. Maura hated it, and ended up basically being given the option, quit or we're going to kick you out, because she got caught shoplifting from the
Oh.
Fort Knox gift shop. There's a place to shoplift for.
Yeah. How'd
Some
that work out
little,
for you?
like chapstick, some kind of lipstick, or just some minor cosmetic. And went on to Amherst to get her nursing degree and was excelling in her classes, but got caught again. She stole a receipt out of a trash can, got the credit card number off of it, and was using it to order pizzas.
Okay.
And the cops came and she got in trouble for that again, too. And the weekend that right before she disappeared, she got into 2 car wrecks. She fender bendered her own car and seemed to be able to talk her way out of it.
Okay.
And then borrowed her father's brand new car and totaled it.
Curious.
So there was a lot of speculation about substance abuse, maybe some kind of an emotional breakdown. Did she go off into the woods on purpose? And
Right.
and nobody seems to really know what happened to her. It's just one of those terrible mysteries. Her family, her poor father especially, has spent every summer since she disappeared, every weekend, searching the woods for her.
Wow. Wow. I watched a show recently on Netflix where I think it was like a brother went missing in the woods, and the family goes and searches still to this day.
Yeah.
So
imagine how that would feel, that sense of just not knowing. It would be more of ability for you to move on and find some sort of reconciliation with it, some peace with it. You knew what happened, but to not know is a nightmare.
That's true. That's so
terrible.
True.
So the other story that struck me, you tell me a story.
Well, I was just thinking, because a little bit of excitement. I have Tubi, which is an online free streaming service.
I know what it is. Yeah.
And they have live TV, which is basically, they say that they show series all back to back. And I recently discovered that they had BritBox Mysteries. I was like going, my productivity just plummeted, Helen. It just plummeted because I was like going, oh my gosh.
What have you been watching?
Well, there was a series of Agatha Christie and Hercule Poirot, whose name I cannot pronounce. But they're
because you don't have enough of the little gray cells.
Yes. I do have the mustache, but I don't have the little gray cells. And then Miss Marple.
Yeah.
So, and just occasionally I would be hanging with a friend of mine, and we were walking in a park in the Cleveland Metro Parks area, and we were on a bridge looking at this lovely little, I don't know if it was a pond or whatever, and one of them turns to me and says, if we were in a British mystery, a dead body would pop up. Right?
Every time you walk your dog.
Yes. And I'm like going, yes,
that's so true.
That is so interesting.
And you don't want to get invited to a country house.
No. But
what do you have a favorite Agatha Christie book?
I don't. It's so hard. I mean, and then There Were None was quite good. And then Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
So good. And I like to see the movies associated with that and the TV shows. And the David Suchet. Sorry, David. The actor who plays Hercule.
Don't know.
But such good acting in that. And it just, it's when you have these beautiful mysteries, let me rephrase this, these beautifully written books, and then you have an actor who, by the facial expressions, can add so much depth.
Nuance, yeah.
Nuance was the word I was looking for. So yeah.
Oh, sorry, I have a bad habit of
No, that's the good. No,
you
that's the word I was looking
because
for.
I'm reading your mind. It's terrible. I know what people are going to say, and I just blurt it out. It's
Stop
terrible.
it. You should be
Bad
ashamed of
habit. I know. Hey, you of all people should know. Although chosen child, youngest baby, spoiled brat. When you come from a big family, you jump in and say your piece, or you're never heard.
Yes, because if you weren't loud, you weren't heard.
That's exactly right. People would come to my family's house and they'd be going, oh my God, it's insanity. My poor husband, you know what they did to him the first time he met them?
No.
They all kind of lined up to shake his hand and greet him. And they did this on purpose. And I knew what they were doing. So, hi, nice to meet you. My name is Seamus. Nice to meet you. My name is Patrick. So he goes all along the line and shakes their hands. And they ran around to the end of the line and did it. But God bless him. He took one look at him and he goes, I'm already shaking your hand. I'm not gonna do it again. Good. Yeah, it was very good. So my favorite Agatha Christie book is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And I love it because I could not figure it out when I read it when I was about 11 or 12, and I could not figure it out. And when I finally found out the ending, I was gobsmacked. Love that book. You know what the British series is that I just adore? I can't imagine anything better. Is the P.G. Woodhouse Jeeves?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so good, so good, so hilarious.
Well, yeah, and I also like watching the old Sherlock Holmes, and I think it's because it's a memory thing for me, because it was on PBS, it was on late. I had a small black and white TV this big that I was watching on the top bunk when I should have been sleeping, and and they were half-hour shows, and they were it's like they were so good. And I think what's interesting is with something like this, Helen, it forces us to take in all of the information that we know, and the way some of these minds work is really fascinating, because sometimes they take all of the things they know and then they rearrange them and see how they work, and they rearrange them. And some of the detectives or the investigators, whatever, they take okay, what don't we know? And then they look at all of those possibilities. And it's such a great way of thinking about problem solving.
Yeah, the best detectives are not the flashy ones. They're the ones who use the little gray cells. Yes. I have always been fascinated by true crime, and people will say, oh, you're so morbid. It's not about the dead body. It's not about the gore. It's about what makes the brains tick of people who will do this. It's psychopathology is probably the single most interesting topic, because it drives everything, drives all human behavior. And if you can understand that, it helps.
Well, and it is very fascinating, those unsolved mysteries. And and I sometimes will watch watch them, and at the end of the first episode, I'll go, that's not quite right, or something's not right with that. And of course, it's a movie, it's a series. We are being manipulated. I mean, truth be told, we're being brought along with the story the way they want. And I think it's just curious to go, how are they going to evolve this and have it on mind if there is a solution?
You're trying to think ahead based on what you know about the psychology involved.
Yes.
In the past 10-ish years, several of my favorite writers have died. And I confess I cried. Oh, and it's ridiculous because,
No.
we weren't much acquainted. So Robert Parker, you're familiar with the Spencer novels.
Yes.
And apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently in maybe the 80s, they made a series.
Yes, they did.
My mother told me about it. I didn't know. I didn't have a TV. I had no idea. But I always am disappointed by how they translate the book into the visual, because often it's internal dialogue, right? And then the other author who died that I just think is one of the all-American greats is Elmore Leonard. Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
They made a dreadful movie of one of his books, Get Shorty. And you can't do justice to his books with a Hollywood flair because it's not about that. It's about psychological motivations and stuff. It's not about the Hollywood flash. They always make that mistake. And then Maeve Binchy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Talk about storytellers.
I liked Maeve Binchy because she was from Dublin. And she had an ear for the language. And I heard my family in her. And not only the way words were used, but the idea, the thought processes, they're very cultural thought processes.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah, very much. Hold that thought, because have you read the Dexter books?
Oh yeah.
I mean, talk about getting into the brain and what works. Very, very fascinating.
So much better than the show.
Of course they are. The show itself is pretty dang good.
Let
me rephrase that. This is just Gerald. Don't come for me, YouTube. This is my opinion. I think season 1 and 2 were good, and then
they dragged it out.
Yeah, they dragged things out.
Money.
It's like,
one of the things I liked about the TV show, this is so shallow. I really liked the taste in clothing of the female cop. I don't remember her name.
His sister. Yes, yeah.
Not the sister, the boss cop.
Oh, yes.
I really liked her. I always enjoyed seeing, what's she going to wear today? Not that I took notes, not that I copied, but it was interesting to watch. I really liked her taste, the particular eye.
Yeah. So I said I had a stack of books here that I wanted to talk about.
Oh, yes.
And because these are books that I have finished, and you mentioned Maeve. And, she had the ability to capture language so well. Have you read Stephen King's On Writing? What did you think of it? And be honest.
Now, I read it when it first came out, and it came out,
99?
25 years ago? Yeah. I thought it was fabulous. I was so impressed with his work ethic.
Yeah.
I think half the battle of actually putting your words on paper is actually picking up a pen and applying it to the paper. That kind of self-discipline. He started out as a young guy. I think he and his wife were both teachers. And he was trying to make a living writing for all these pulp magazines.
Yeah.
And having no luck at all. And he just was tenacious. And that's what it takes.
Yeah, it is very much tenacious. Because back in 2020, actually before 2020, I was meeting with some friends, and we were writing. We were just writing. The book Drawing Down the Bones was the book that talked about that. Natalie. I
remember that.
Yeah. And so really, really a great little book. And so in 2020, I did over a year of writing every single day. And some days it it started off with like 5 minutes and it ended up with like an hour. So stories are unfolding. But so I have been enjoying this, or, talking about on writing, in particular, when he finally got to the writing aspect of it, instead of talking about his CV, because it was like, okay, here's his backstory. I get it. I sort of move it along. I'm not a patient reader.
Yeah.
I mean, I will just say that. But it was so interesting. He had me in the first forward when he talked about the book, The Elements of Style. Do you
Oh,
remember
yes.
this?
I have that.
Okay, I have this too, and I got another copy of it because Mr. Moore was my senior English teacher, and he read, this was our textbook, and he went through it, and I'd forgotten about it, but when to have Stephen King talk about this book, and he's like going, yeah, everything you really need is right there to be an exceptionally good writer. And I'm like going, I mean, it's so much fun. I know people are watching and are going, Gerald, thanks for the history lesson. But elementary rules of usage. It's just like, I mean, key things that we have forgotten about, because you and I have talked about, Helen, is the need for longhand written stuff so that people understand what was going on in the world and in our
Yeah.
daily lives.
Yeah.
The idea of a diary.
Mm-hmm.
And because the diaries, they uncover diaries, then we really get an understanding of what was going on in people's lives.
Day to day. Yeah.
Yeah, and how we were managing things. So, but Stephen King talks about people who are really skilled with capturing dialogue or the language or setting and stuff like that. And so you had mentioned Maeve, and I'm like going, yeah, because that's an appreciation of that.
Elmore Leonard too.
Yes,
His
Leonard
dialogues were incredible.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, and I'm a geek, because there's like, he talks about, furthermore, and then there's a list of books that he references in passing.
I don't remember. It's been so long. Oh, okay.
Pages and pages and pages,
Books.
and it's so good just to go, oh yeah, and that.
Pick 3 out and just mention them.
Well, he talks about Anthony Powell, A Dance in the Music of Time. He also mentioned Flannery O'Connor.
Oh, yeah.
Margaret Atwood. Sue Monk Kidd, The Secret Life of Bees.
Bees, yeah.
And so it's just fascinating, the fact of how I can never pronounce her last name, Proulx.
Proy, I think.
Yes.
Annie Proy. Yeah,
the
shipping news. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
the shipping news. And
I love her work.
So
love it.
and what's fun is I noticed this because, I mean, you are a prolific reader.
Well, I used to be. I'm ashamed to say I have allowed what I do on YouTube to completely interfere with that, but I'm trying to meld them both back together. When I do a book, for our Saturday book, it slows me down because I have to take notes. And
Sure.
It's incredibly painful because I'm chomping at the bit to get to the next. So
It says overachiever.
I didn't recognize the word. I actually just couldn't see it.
Yes. But so I think what's fascinating is he does talk about, to be a good writer, you need to read a lot and you need to write a lot. And you read a lot. And I am actually a very slow reader, and it made me feel good because he talked about he is not a fast reader, but he's reading all of the time.
All the time, yeah.
And so, and he even there's a section in the back of the book where he is talking to his son about how his son Owen King, recording audiobooks for my dad, Stephen King. And he wrote about this, and it's like how his dad was ahead of the books on, the audiobooks. Copyright not intended or anything like that. But no, so he wanted his kids to, he gave his kids money to record a book for him so that he could listen to it while he drove around in his car.
Oh, that I didn't. That's hilarious.
I love that.
God, that's hilarious. I love that.
And of course, what kid is going to turn down $9 a cassette to read a book and he's like,
well, it's $9 a cassette from Stephen King, but he can afford it.
Well, yes, but still, but I think it was a great way to encourage the kid to read something that they might not want to read.
I want to recommend something. So I'm going to show you two pictures here. I wanted to get the pictures. These are his two sons, and one of them looks like his clone. So check this out.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
The one that looks like his clone is his son, Joe. He writes himself.
Yes.
And he writes under a pseudonym, Joe Hill. And his books are great. They're absolutely fabulous. They're so, so good. And in defense of, well, just to correct what you said, I am not a prolific reader today. I owe it all to very strict Catholic school education. I will say that. As soon as we could read, we went home on summer break with a multiple page book list. And the expectation was you were going to read them all in the summer. Yeah. And I did, because I was the world's laziest kid. If I could be horizontal with the book, I was happy. And so that was no pain for me. It was fine. And that went on, like in high school, they had expectation. You show up your freshman year of high school, you better have already read the books that we sent you when we told you you were accepted. And they were not kidding. They really made reference to them. Do you remember being taught grammar in grade school?
A little bit, because I actually just picked this up, Warner's English Grammar and Composition.
I don't know that one.
It's because it's something that Stephen King had mentioned. This was one of the books that he used as a grammar teacher. And he's like going, it's so good. So I found it inexpensively on, on a place online. So, but anyhow, okay. So what about grammar?
Find it at Goodwill. It's incredible.
I bought it off of a Goodwill. Yeah.
Nuns were particularly, and I don't think it was unique to nuns. I think there was just a period of time where it was considered important, to learn grammar. And not that we remember it or use it today, but in theory, right? And I remember very much going home every single day with exercise pages, 20 sentences with a blank, and you had to find the appropriate form of the verb or form of the adverb or whatever. Tell us whether it's a noun or a pronoun and I remember just sweating buckets over that stuff and hating it. But they always threw out a few little rules that made it quite easy. And I have just extreme angst. I cannot even listen to people on television and on radio who should know better. Ivy League school graduates who are big shots, and they'll say things like, let me see if I can get this wrong. They'll say things like, just between he and I. I'm clawing at my face. So there's a rule. It's simple. You break it down and you do it one at a time. Between him, between me, and you always put yourself last, between him and me. And everybody thinks that's wrong. And they're trying so hard to do it right. And it's not.
Yep.
Oh.
No, I understand that. Well, and so I have a good friend. She is an editor, and she was the one who I write with and was talking about this book, saying it was really good. And so I was like, oh, and I've picked this up. She used to teach English to middle schoolers, so she remembered the Warners.
That's like purgatory.
Yes. But then she also remembered, and she still does this occasionally. She will graph a sentence.
Oh, I love graphing sentences.
And so and it's
I love
doing that. and Jeffrey's on the other side of the camera. He's like, oh no, I love doing that. And she says, and
tell him I love him.
Yes, I happened to mention. I said, oh, there's graphing sentences, and she's like, well, of course. How are you going to know where to put the comma? And it's just like spoken like an editor. Okay, I get it.
Yep.
So those are my three, my three things that are small things that bring me joy. It was like, oh my gosh.
And this thrills me to the core of my being. I who have a little pile of books that I every time I walk by, I look at them fondly, and periodically I'll sit down and page through them. my Latin grammar book. When I first got it, I'm gonna full confession here. When I first got it, I put a brown paper cover on it to keep it in good shape, and I spelled grammar wrong.
I love that.
Just to keep us humble, Yeah.
Well, and it is one of those things. And we talked about this last month when we were talking about, National Library Month or National Book Month. There are so many good books out there. You do not have to read every book that you start. If you are not liking a book, stop reading it.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean,
I have Louise Erdrich's new book. I haven't started it yet. One of my very, 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 very favorite writers, Native American. She's from, I'm going to get this wrong and people are going to hate me. And this is not disrespect. It's my poor memory. She's from the Turtle Band of the Chippewa, I think.
Yes. And I can't remember her name.
Louise Erdrich.
Yes.
Yes. The Great Lakes area.
Yes.
And she was married to Michael Doris. And that was a tragic story. Are you familiar with that story? Well, it's difficult to talk about on YouTube because every other word is banned, but he died tragically. Not an accident. He didn't get sick and he wasn't murdered. That doesn't leave a lot more, right?
No. Yes.
After an investigation was begun by Child Protective Services, allegations. And this was such a tragedy for many reasons. It was a personal tragedy for all involved, and I can't imagine for her what that must have been like. We won't even talk about the children, but,
Yeah.
And then she and he were the stars of their community, the great hope of their community, because they were so well educated and such advocates for their culture and for their people. He had adopted a little boy when he was a single man. I think he was like in his late 20s, early 30s. I'm not sure if he was still a graduate student or if he had gotten his doctorate or, I'm not sure. I don't remember. It's so long ago. But this little boy was about 4 or 5 years old. He was Native American and they could not find a placement for him. And he adopted him. And the child had all kinds of behavioral and developmental problems. Well, later, they figured out after the fact this kid had fetal alcohol syndrome. And Michael Doris wrote the definitive book on that called The Broken Cord.
Oh, okay.
Really a good book. And he wrote a great children's book, The Birch Bark Canoe.
Oh, I've heard of that one. Yes.
Yeah. And he was a poet. And of course, Louise Erdrich is an absolute star of American literature. And then this terrible, I mean, there's nothing about this in any direction you look at it that it wasn't a tragedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah.
And she's just gone on to have this just illustrious career. I mean, she's very well respected.
Mhm.
I don't think she's as respected as she should be. You know, I just think she's
yeah.
fabulous writer. I just love her.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about the Stephen King and On Writing. Is what I appreciated about him is there was no bias to male or female authors. They were just authors.
Good writers. Yeah.
Good writers. And so there was this nice beauty, and I don't know why it popped into my head as I was reading it, and I'm like, I don't care if that's a conscious choice. It's the right choice, and it's so well informed because the dude consumes a lot of books. And so, because he's listening to it, he's reading with a different ear than I do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And his female characters are often the empowered ones. They're often the really integral to the story. They're not peripheral. I've heard people argue the opposite, and I would disagree with that. I think they're very powerful. They're not always action figures, but that's not the only way you can be powerful, you know?
Well, and yes, and his wife, he talks about how his wife will help him with that.
Well, she's an author in her own right.
Yes.
And doesn't get a lot of acknowledgement for it. I can't imagine being married to somebody of the fame, the notoriety of Stephen King, and being in the same business. That's gotta hurt.
Yeah.
That's gotta really be hard. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So fascinating.
So I told Gerald that I thought it would be really fun to play a little game we like to call Trivial Pursuits and see what little conversational journey we can take. So I actually have, I'm going to give you a choice. I'm not going to make it difficult. I've got the old school.
Uh-huh.
I've got the new school, but it's not new anymore. And then I've got the Hollywood, and you can decide.
I'm probably more familiar with old school, so we should probably do old school.
Okay.
We can save the Hollywood and the other one for later if you want.
No problem. And I'm going to move these in case I've looked at them, because I was looking at a few of them to see how dated, how dated the questions were. And there are some that are really, they really do pertain to the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. When did the original Trivial Pursuit come out?
Let me see if there's a date on this box.
Because it is fascinating because
1981.
1981. Yes.
And that was right about the time when we were first married. And I can remember being at parties, having parties, and they would end up at the end of the evening, everybody playing Trivial Pursuits. It was quite the fad.
For all of the pieces of pie and all of that stuff. And this would be after a big meal, and after
my husband, big meal and wine, and my husband would fall asleep on the floor. Everybody's sprawled on the floor playing the game in a circle on the floor, and he'd fall asleep, and everybody would fight to have him on their team, Mr. Memory, right? So he'd pass out, and they'd be playing the game, and they'd get stuck, and they'd nudge him and wake him up and ask him the question. And he'd give them the answer, and then
I love that.
I hate playing Trivial Pursuits with him. I hate it.
Well, I like playing Trivial Pursuit with people like that because they will let me roll the dice.
Kind of like one of my kids. Hey, listen, I had a daughter who at the age of 3, one summer, became obsessed with Uno. And she wanted me to play Uno with her every day. And, Ken and I saint that I am, I agreed. Listen, if she was playing Uno, she was quiet, right?
Yes.
So I played Uno with her, and that kid beat me like 9 times out of 10 all summer long. The whole family loves to remember that.
Of course they do.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Do you have a particular favorite category? I'll give you the categories that I think these stand for. It's been so long since I've played this game. G, I think, yeah, this is geography.
Yes.
E is entertainment. H is history. A-L.
Arts and literature.
Oh, okay. S-N.
F-N.
S.
S-N, sports and news.
No, that's S-L.
S-L, sorry.
Sports and leisure, right?
Sports and
And
leisure.
then S-N. What was S-N?
S-N. Science and nature.
Oh, you're going to do really well on this.
No,
I can
no, I am.
tell. What's your favorite category?
Let's do science and nature since that was the last, the one that I could remember.
Okay. What did Jean-Marie Farina of Cologne, Germany invent in 1850? It's a giveaway.
I'm looking at Jeffrey. Am I allowed to phone my husband?
Well, I can't stop him from cheating if that's what he wants to do.
He would not cheat.
Okay, well, let's see what you say first, and then let him give you the answer and see if you know.
Say it again.
What did Jean-Marie Farina of Cologne, Germany invent in 1850?
Dijon mustard. I have no idea.
Does
Jeffrey
Jeffrey know?
Have one? No, he's shaking his head.
Okay, so I'll confess that I got the answer wrong in my head. I thought her name is, or maybe it's his name, was Farina. Okay. So I thought it was like cereal, some kind of processed cereal. It's actually cologne. I know.
I thought about that. It was like, well, okay, there we go. That's fun.
Okay. I'm going to do an arts and literature for you.
Oh, yes.
I'm almost positive you'll get this right. We'll see. Who took dictation from Perry Mason? You can see it.
Oh, yes, and I cannot remember. My memory of these details are awful.
Okay, I'll give you a hint. I'm bad too. I'll give you a hint. Roadways.
Oh. The byline yeah. Oh, this is like password.
I was hoping I couldn't find our old password.
Yeah. Yes, Jeffrey.
What's it? Della something?
Della someone?
Half right, 50%.
You got Della. I think it's Della, not it's not Delta.
Roadways.
Della Street, yeah.
Yes, Della Street.
Okay.
And because it was the same name as one of my elementary school teachers.
It was the same name as one of his elementary school teachers, he said.
Did she say just call me Della?
No.
All my elementary teachers were in floor-length habits with a wimple.
Yes.
So, Okay, so let's do another one. Oh, this is really hard. I couldn't get this, so I'm going to ask you this. What's the only country crossed by both the equator and the Tropic of Capricorn? That's hard, huh?
Yeah.
Equator.
Okay, I've got an idea. I was right. I'm shocked.
Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is Ecuador, but that's not right.
That's what I thought, and then I thought, no, it's this other country, and I was right the second time. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a hint. I was thinking the equator and the Tropic of Capricorn would have to be kind of big.
Yes.
We'd have to cover a lot of distance. So does that help?
Ugh.
I know.
And
I'm so bad at geography.
well, and here's the thing.
Capricorn is the southern one, right?
Capricorn is the southern one, Jeffrey is asking. He's processing. I'm watching the wheels
Wait,
turn.
is it, wait a minute. Is it, or is it Tropic of Cancer? Tropic of Capricorn. I think it's the southern one. Yeah. I'm just going to tell you, Brazil.
Yeah.
And that was going to be my guess because
Okay.
big enough.
Okay.
Yeah. Jeffrey's like when South America is big enough and Brazil. Yeah.
Okay. I want to torture you.
Oh, good.
With
You're going to do Hollywood? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we were talking backstage about Hollywood stuff.
Hollywood crimes. Let me see if I can find a crime one. Oh, this is, you're going to know this. I just have a real strong feeling you're going to know this.
Okay.
What 1971 film was about a soldier who lost his arms, legs, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose and begged his doctors to kill him?
Okay, I have to say, in my own defense, I was 5.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say, if you remember Vietnam War protests and stuff, this would be significant. I just assumed, no, I thought you were older than that.
Oh, thanks, Helen.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to guess because I haven't looked.
What are you going to guess?
I think it's Johnny Got His Gun, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Johnny Got His Gun. It was really controversial, and they made a movie of it, and it was very controversial because you can, what a topic, right?
Yeah.
So let's see here. Here's a question I think we should call Denise. What's Burt Reynolds' zodiacal sign?
His zodiac sign?
Yeah. Burt Reynolds. Who knew? I don't know.
Is he like a Scorpio? Jeffrey says no.
No, I don't know. I don't know enough about. Okay, I'm gonna guess Leo because they like to be the center of attention.
Or I would say Aries because they're pig-headed. Sorry to all of the Aries watching.
Oh, well, there's positive and negative. Okay, we're all wrong. Aquarius. I don't know what that means. I don't know.
Oh, Aquarius is an air sign. I know about this much, and I know, but Aries is the water bearer. So I remember back in high school, I was dating someone as a Scorpio, water sign. They were an Aries. They were the water bearer, but they were air, so they understood the water because they carried the water. Sort of a weird thing. Sorry. Okay.
It's so complicated. There's so much to doing, astrology, and we all get caught up. I mean, the only thing I really know about astrology is Linda Goodman, love signs. Like who you shouldn't go out with at the bar,
Oh yeah.
from the early 70s. But there's so much more to it, so much more layers of subtlety to it that are really interesting and seem to actually hold true. It's funny, I was listening to a conversation today on a podcast, and it's kind of a humor podcast. It's 2 women talking, and they're kind of dismissing horoscopes in the newspaper or, online type thing. And I just wanted to yell at them and say, well, duh, you can't go by that. That's nonsense. That's just baloney, to go by those brief Taurus, today you will have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere.
But it's just like with anything like that. Are you familiar with like the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs? Yeah.
They were talking about that too. Yeah.
And I think, it's a really interesting way to get a sense of how people can be in the natural world, in their natural habitat. And it's I think it's interesting.
Well, it's based on Carl Jung, the
Mhm.
Myers-Briggs, right?
Yes,
And
Myers-Briggs is.
actually, usually kind of goes along with astrological stuff.
Yes.
There's something there, right?
Isn't that the best stuff when there's a lot of overlap between things? It's just like there's nuances, and it's like with science. I'm not a scientist. You know, Helen, you work in a lab, or you worked in a lab.
No, my husband
Yeah.
did.
Okay, you're married to a scientist, so I'm so
Well,
sorry.
I was a biology major. We won't talk about physics, but I was a
Oh,
biology
okay.
major.
I love it. She's put, we won't talk about physics. But I guess my point is when something else is understood, something new is understood, it gives us an opportunity to understand what we already know in a broader perspective. You know?
Yeah, you have to maintain an open mind about it because,
Yes.
contrary to what a lot of people think, science is not written in stone. Science is an ever-evolving kind of an organism of its own that, as new information is discovered, it adapts to that, and
That's so true.
And so what people used to say 150 years ago was science was their understanding of science, and things have evolved from there. Oh, pardon the pun. Things have grown since there, and plasma physics is fascinating to me. I'm not a physicist. I'm very bad at physics. It makes no sense to me, really. Actually, any way that you explain it makes sense to me. Equally. All different ways you could explain it makes sense. But plasma physics does make sense to me. And it's congruent with a lot of ancient philosophy.
Yeah.
Which,
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
When something that's ancient gets validated by something newly discovered and newly understood. There's a mystery for you. How's that work?
Well, people in the past were not dumb.
Mm-hmm.
They were no different than we are. Other than their cultural context, they were no different than we are, and they had the capacity that we have.
Yeah.
And a lot of knowledge gets occulted, either to protect the knowledge or to protect the practitioners of the knowledge, or to protect the general population from the knowledge. There's that too, right?
Wise words.
Yeah. So we make a lot of assumptions that the farther back you go in history, the dumber people were. That's not true at all.
No.
No.
Yeah. The skills were different that they needed then that we need now.
Their access to technology was different. There was a time when writing was considered technology.
I love that.
Socrates, was it Socrates who said this, or was it Plato? Well, one of those old guys. Socrates, I'm pretty sure. Plato was Socrates' student, right? Yeah, okay. So it was Socrates who said this, and there are no real writings of Socrates. It's all about what people say he said. Because he didn't believe in writing. He said that when you start writing things down, you get lazy and you lose the brain. You lose that ability to remember. And so he was very much an oral tradition and believed in the necessity of maintaining that, and scorned writing, and was very dismissive of it, which I think is really interesting.
I think that's really interesting, but it does bring us back to the importance of storytelling and oral communication, and the power of that. I think as a species, stories are really important for us to understand where we fit.
Communally,
yes. Yeah.
I really don't like reading out loud. It was a trial, a terrible trial for me to read to my children. I did it. And fortunately, I had a husband who really loved to do it, but I did it and wormed my way out of it at every opportunity.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
However, I love telling stories. Like that murder I was telling you about, that disappearance. Love to tell a story. There's nothing like being able to put a narrative together and getting the reaction from people. There's something about that that's very appealing. And there are many cultures where that's how information is handed down.
Yes.
And
that's so true.
Brings people together. It unifies people with a common worldview. It's very important.
Yeah.
So what's taken the place of that in our culture now? I have my opinion. I'm curious.
It's probably television.
Yeah, the visual
social media. The visual has taken over that, because how often are families sitting down and eating a meal together and listening and finding out what the day was like and what went on at school and how mom's job is going and what dad did in the workshop. And there's that storytelling. And not only is it important, I think, to be able to listen and understand the story, it's also important to be able to tell the story in a way that is authentic. Why do you think?
Well, I do think it's visual. I think a couple of things come into play. People's attention span.
Yes.
People want constant reinforcement of excitement. They want that adrenaline thing constantly. They want change, and television does that. Videos do that, theater, and there's a whole generation of children now who their knowledge of mythology is the Marvel comic book movies.
Yeah.
Proud to say I've never seen one. Just not into it.
I think the last myth that I watched was Clash of the Titans, the movie back in the 70s, the really badly animated. Anyhow, it was really cool though. It was really cool back in the day. Okay, so
well, I have inherent trouble with the whole concept of the Titans, the gods, all those guys. They were so petty and small-minded and vindictive, vengeful, promiscuous, to the detriment of other people, narcissistic. I never understood the appeal, because you wouldn't like them if you met them,
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey and I were listening to the Grimm's fairy tales while we were driving.
Oh, that'll make you sleepless.
I mean, and yes. I mean, it's just like stories, the fairy tales, proverbs, things like that. They're meant to teach, to give people an opportunity to learn lessons. So,
correct.
And so the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, those are really grim. And if you've ever read them, when they have not been filtered through a big production company,
Disney.
Yes. Well, I wasn't going to say it.
Well, no, it's true. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm pretty
true.
Sure Disney's aware.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, and it's really fascinating, because it's like, holy mackerel. I mean, just the way that the king is giving away a daughter because somebody just shows up and says, "Hey, I want to get married to somebody." I'm like, no. No, that's not how it no. And that's Gerald being judgy. Okay. No, don't do that.
Well, I don't think you're being judgy. Well, so what if you are? You have a certain code of ethics. You have, values, and it disagrees with the inherent code of ethics from which these stories come.
Yeah.
Shows you how times have changed, you'd like to think.
Well, yeah, and some of them I get some of the initial lesson. It's like, do what your parents told you and don't leave the path. Okay, little
Yeah.
red cap.
Yeah. Well, the stories. I was this a Grimm's fairy tale? I can't remember the story of the golden ball, the princess at the well, and she drops the ball into the well, and a frog brings it up and says, "I'll give you your golden ball back if you let me come to dinner." And she's like, "I'm not going to sit with a nasty old frog," but she wanted the ball back, so she agreed to it reluctantly, and she ran home with the ball, right? So they're sitting down to the banquet, and everybody's there that she wants to impress, I guess. And I guess there's a knock on the door. It's been kind of a while since I read this thing. And the frog comes in and says, "Well, you promised me I could eat with you." And so he hops up on the chair and sits beside her. And if I recall, he eats out of her bowl, and she's horrified. And then he wants her to kiss him, and he wants to sleep in her bed. And I don't remember exactly how it unfolded, but eventually he turned into a prince. And it's, that whole thing about you kiss enough frogs, you'll finally find
Yes.
your handsome prince. That, interesting story. And I think it really wasn't about finding the right guy. I think it was about not reneging on your promises and judging people by appearances.
Yes, I think so. I think so. Sorry for that tangent. It was just one of those things.
Oh, no, it's great. I hadn't thought about that story in a long time. Yeah. So let's see here if we've got another.
Yes.
I'm trying to find a good one that I actually know what they're talking about.
Well, I have to say, I think the people who did the Trivial Pursuit, what a great way to bring people around a table and to have a conversation. So good. So fun.
I think I know the answer to this one. So I only ask you the ones that I know the answer to. You notice that? No, it's because I can relate to it. Who played Private Eye Philip Marlowe in Farewell, My Lovely?
I do not know. I'm watching Jeffrey, who has got that faraway look in his eye, trying to remember. He's not coming up with it. Who was it?
Oh, I was wrong. I will admit it. Mea culpa. I thought it was Humphrey Bogart.
Okay.
It wasn't. It was that big old pothead, Robert Mitchum. He went to jail for smoking reefer.
Really?
He was, he was known for that. Yeah. But, Philip Marlowe, that's Dashiell Hammett, right? The writer Dashiell Hammett.
Mm-hmm.
That string of books that he wrote were really interesting because he talked about really terrible things without ever using the words.
Yes.
I'm thinking about, was it the Maltese Falcon? No, there was another one with the two sisters. Humphrey Bogart was in it. Lauren Bacall was in it.
I don't remember.
And it's in San Francisco, which, San Francisco is a character in his books. I swear. The fog, the sound of the foghorns, just the waterfront. I mean, San Francisco itself just sets the scene. Let's see what the book was, because
I'm curious.
It's a very interesting story about how do I say this? I don't want to get in trouble. Inappropriate behavior between generations. Oh, come on now. Where's the name of this? Pardon me?
Who was the author that you were saying?
Dashiell Hammett.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Oh, come on now. This is fascinating stuff for everybody to be listening to.
Are you talking book or movie?
It was a movie. It was a book, but it was a movie.
The Thin
Haven't
Man? After the Thin Man?
haven't have not.
Another Thin Man? Oh, haven't had my hmm. This is so
No, that's not right. Dashiell Hammett. Now he was married to, oh God, what was her name? Lillian Hellman, wasn't he?
Oh.
Or have a relationship with Lillian Hellman?
Wasn't she like the first lady of the American theater? Is that how they referred to Lillian Hellman?
Did they? I don't know. She was very controversial writer. She wrote The Children's Hour. You know what that was about?
Right. No.
It was about teenage girls in a boarding school. You know what they got up to.
Uh-oh.
Oh, come on now. Why can I not find this? Well, I give up. Oh, here we go. What are no? Okay, Maltese Falcon. It must have been the Maltese Falcon, but Lauren Bacall and her sister, I think. There was weird stuff going on. The movie Chinatown
yes.
is also about that, right? And that was Faye Dunaway.
Yes.
And John Huston, he was just a horror in that movie.
See,
you know who he is. You know who John Huston is. Okay, I believe he's Walter Huston's son, or maybe it's vice versa. But his daughter is Angelica Huston.
Oh, okay.
And Angelica Huston is the only American actress that I have ever heard, and this is me being critical, who actually does a convincing Irish accent. The Irish accent is probably one of the most difficult accents to take on when it's not your way of speech. And why did she do such a good job? Because she grew up in Ireland.
Imagine that.
Yeah. He bought a big plot of land, a big old house in Ireland, and she grew up there.
Helen Hayes was known as the first lady of the American theater, according to IMDb.com. Okay. Notice that there's my library experience coming in. I had to cite my source.
What does IMDb stand for?
Internet Movie Database.
I would never have figured that out. Okay. Yeah. Now, Helen Hayes, I know she was in a really bad accident, and I think it was in San Francisco, and she was her taxi was hit broadside. Was she killed in that accident? Am I making that up?
By the way, Lillian Gish was the first lady of American cinema.
Oh, you're thinking of Lillian Gish, and I'm talking Lillian Hellman.
Yeah, Helen Hayes and Lillian Gish were friends.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
did you ever see the appeal of Lillian Gish and her sister?
No.
Was it Dorothy Gish? I never saw the appeal in them. Yeah.
Well, okay, let me ask you this, and this goes back to what we were talking a little bit about backstage. Is the appeal real, or is it manufactured by the machine, the movie industry, the movie studio, and the media?
Well, absolutely, their image was crafted.
Yes.
You know, they played these little innocent girls in ringlets, and I just never really understood their appeal. Now, having said that, I liked the more, I guess you could use the word raw, silent film actresses. Like, I loved Louise Brooks. And Louise Brooks got sick of the judgment because she left home when she was 16. She was a wild child, and she lived that way, and got a lot of negative pushback in Hollywood. And when the silent films went to talkies, it became more difficult for her, not because of her voice, but just because of the politics. She left. She went to Germany and she became a gigantic star in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gigantic.
Wow.
And ended up, this is such a sad story. And this is on YouTube. You can find these videos on YouTube. This young man was living in kind of a rundown apartment building in New York City, or one of the boroughs of New York City. And there was an old lady who lived in the building, and he'd see her all the time, and he thought she was quite eccentric, and she was. It was Louise Brooks. She died in poverty. And
wow.
in what's the word I want? Lack of renown, just anonymity. Yeah.
Wow.
But he interviewed her when he realized who she was. He made a bunch of videos, and they're not formal, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're really interesting to hear what she has to say about early Hollywood. And one of my favorite silent actresses died tragically, and now I can see her face. I can't remember her name, which is pretty hilarious since I love her. This is what it's like to get old, Gerald. It's truly sad.
It'll be interesting to see what happens to me if I'm already. I don't remember what that was.
you probably won't notice.
There you go. Yes. There you go.
I can tell you here. I can find her very, very quickly because this is a good story. She is dead, but not really. Oh, come on. Okay, I got. Here we go. I left out the most important word. That's why.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I got it. So, Olive Thomas. Ever heard of her?
No, but go on.
She was the original flapper.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a really beautiful actress. And most of her films are completely lost. They only have 2 partial films of her movies left.
Oh, okay.
She married Jack, the younger brother of whoops. The United Artists, the Douglas Fairbanks, and what was his wife's name? Mary Pickford. Yeah, Mary Pickford. Yeah.
Good.
So, and then I think Charlie Chaplin. The 3 of them went independent and formed United Artists. Mm-hmm. But Olive Thomas married Mary Pickford's younger brother Jack, and he was a renowned, as they like to call it, rake. He was a rake. So he was into substance abuse and irresponsible sexual behavior. That's what that means. And they were having a lot of problems in their relationship, and they were trying to patch things up. And they got on a cruise ship, to go from New York to England. And at some point in the journey, the story is she got up in the middle of the night and in the dark, thinking she was taking her own headache medication, ended up drinking his topical syphilis medication.
Oh.
Died horribly. It took her a few days. She was severely poisoned, and it was awful.
Oh, my.
Yeah. But her ghost haunts the New Amsterdam Theater on Broadway. Oh. And this is not just me talking. There are multiple people who have seen it. Mm-hmm. One guy was janitor, and he was working late at night, and next day he said to somebody, the boss, I thought you told me the building would be empty when I'm working. And the boss said, well, it is. And he said, well, who is the young woman that waved at me from across the seats, in the auditorium? She walked through and she waved at me as she walked through. And he described her. And the guy says, oh, that was Olive. You saw Olive Thomas. And she appeared there and was, I want to say she had a relationship with Florence Ziegfeld.
Okay.
And she was discovered working like the handkerchief counter or something at Macy's or
Mhm.
Ben, what's it called? Bergdorf Goodman or someplace like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
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 And above, he owned the theater, and above the theater there was like a patio, an open air place, and he had like a nightclub up there, and they had risque after hours performances, and
Mm.
yeah, and she haunts the building. Isn't that interesting?
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and you don't have to answer this. Where would you haunt?
Oh, I would haunt whoever I'm pissed at when I die.
Okay.
So, whoever done me wrong. I wouldn't be a place, it would be a who.
It would be a who.
And I'm kidding. In the sense that I would not haunt in by definition in a scary, awful way. I would try to accompany and protect people that I cared about.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah.
And if I could do a little light torture to people I was mad at, that'd be okay too.
Yeah.
Revenge,
Yeah.
No, because you're supposedly above all that, right?
I've heard. That's what I've heard. Yes, I've heard that.
Do you have a place you would haunt?
I'm not sure. I mean, I spent so many years in libraries. I like a good library. I like things in order, and a place for everything and everything in its place. And
Yeah.
hello, I'm the guy with all of the cards.
Obsessively cataloging your life.
Obsessively cataloging my life. But I've never been to like the Library of Congress. I've never been there. I've never been to the Smithsonian. I don't think I would haunt a place. I would probably, for lack of a better word, wouldn't necessarily hang around a place. I would hang around an idea. And so if people, because from the last time you and I talked, one of my favorite story is A Christmas Carol, and I just listened to it, read by Jim Dale. Loved it.
I don't know who that is.
Jim Dale is the man who is the performer who did all of the Harry Potter books on audio in the United States. Very good, very skilled actor. So you can check it out from your local library on Libby.
Yes.
So I listened to it right after Halloween for my birthday, and so I love this idea of a place. It's like when there's missed opportunities to find that joy, or that, like, the Christmas spirit, the ghost of Christmas Present, who is giving all of this extra oomph to families in need, and to make it even greater. What small thing they have, he's blessing it and making it greater. I love that idea. It's just like going, okay, let's take what little you have that you appreciate, and let's turn up the volume on that.
Like the fairy godmother, kind of.
Sure, I'll be a fairy godmother. It takes me a couple hours to get ready, but I can do it. I can do it.
So I want to brag. I actually got to go to the library at Trinity College in Dublin.
Ooh.
And I saw the Book of Kells.
Did you?
I just have to clutch my heart. It was thrilling. And every day they changed the page. So that, because it's an illuminated manuscript. So it's one of those ancient manuscripts that it's all done by hand. Mm-hmm. And then the first letter or the first word on the page is all illustrated. It's beautiful. And every day they turn the page so that, people get to see it. If you go in every single day, eventually you'll see them all. And they have this wonderful display. Sometimes these things are stupid, but in this case, maybe because I was interested. It was very interesting. It was a video, and it ran in a bank of screens, kind of connected all the way down the room. And so you could really start anywhere you wanted. It somehow, I don't remember why, but it didn't distract from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed you, talked about and showed you the process of processing the hide and making the vellum and stretching it and writing the book and then putting the book pages together by hand and sewing everything and how they emboss the outside. And it was just fascinating. So fascinating. And so if you're going to go to Ireland, go to Dublin, go to the university, Trinity University, and go into the library there, and you see the Book of Kells, and you can see all these old books. They have all the old original books that are chained to the wall so that nobody would take them, because books were so valuable, you know, big oversized things with chains padlocked on.
Wow.
Skip the stupid Blarney Stone. That's just, you know, Disney. Go to the Book of Kells, and then go to Newgrange and see the ancient underground, I don't know what to call them, places where they built so that the light of the solstice, I think, came in.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know what I'm talking about, but something astrological happened there.
That's funny. I remember going to, went to the State Library of Ohio. I had a friend there, and he was like going, "Oh, here, let me take you into the back and show you this thing." And he was showing me this book that was, that contained a letter, or it was a folio or something, a letter by Abraham Lincoln.
Oh.
And I'm looking at that and I'm like going, is you know, I'm like, is that, and he's like going, yeah. And I'm like going, holy mackerel. And again, it's this idea of as you know, I like that antiquity about it. I also like the heritage of it, and I don't know, there's something about the age, and it was so exciting. It was like, holy mackerel, that's what? I mean, it's like, wow.
You know, they use the phrase, you know, bringing history alive, but there is something really remarkable about being that close to an object that was in the hands of such a significant historical figure. You know, the Smithsonian's an interesting place. They have back rooms, and they have all these drawers and cabinets and stuff. And what people don't really necessarily know is that there's not enough money or space to what's the word I want, to archive first and then display it. They have to date it and locate it and all that stuff before they ever put it out for observation. And the money is not there. And so all of these really rare, one-of-a-kind, significant objects are just moldering away in I mean, they're not moldering, but they're just sitting ignored in drawers. And one of the things that blew my mind, they had a whole section for Native American artifacts. And boy, oh boy, does the story of Native Americans in this country change when you get the opportunity to see the stuff they didn't choose to put out for the public eye. Machines they made, handmade machines.
Yes.
Toys that ran on their own. You know, that using the laws of nature that they inherently understood, because like we said earlier, just because they lived a long time ago doesn't mean they were stupid. And they had all of these instruments and implements and tools and toys and art objects that were so sophisticated and showed such a wealth of understanding of the world and an ability to utilize it. It's beyond a pity that that stuff is not available for all of us to see. And I'm willing to bet that probably the Native American peoples would like their stuff back. You know, it's like a bad marriage and you still have my stuff and I want it back. And I would not blame them a bit to feel that way.
Yeah, I would not blame them either. Well, I don't blame them. And it would be lovely to be able to have an opportunity to see and experience that history to come alive. And to be able to discuss it and look at it. And because part of the great thing about history is understanding what came before it and what came after it, because then you understand its importance and its significance and the power of that, you know, person doing what they did. So
I think the media that we ingest has done us an enormous disservice. Well, but in the context of history, I was in Chicago, and I think you've probably been there once or twice.
I have, yes.
And the art museum there. What really struck me, and not something that I'm particularly fascinated by, but it really struck me, was what you got going on behind you there, the suits of armor.
Yep.
They had a whole gallery full of suits of armor. So you say suits of armor and you think, you know, Hollywood medieval jousting, and you don't really think about it, right? You see those things up close and you see the intense engineering and labor and artistry that went into them. These things are all engraved and decorated. And I mean, I can't get a paper clip to work if it gets bent out of shape. I just don't understand how they are able, you know, fascinating.
And I think there is a lot of beauty in that, because a lot of times in history, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen currently, there's the necessity of a suit of armor and the engineering to make it happen, and then all of the stuff that goes on underneath, so somebody can wear 70 pounds of armor and be able to move
and breathe
yes,
not drown in your own sweat.
Yes, but and then they really, I think there's a beauty in giving something that is necessary a beauty to it and elevating it. It's like this, the Book of Kells. First letter is always it's highly
beautiful.
Illustrated. Yeah. It's beautiful. What would happen if we did that with if people wrote letters? What would happen if we started the letters like that? Or each first paragraph, the first, capital letter of a new paragraph.
Yeah. Well, I think we've kind of moved on to a different era. I just don't
have. I mean,
talking about Chicago reminded me of something. And talking about the utilitarian made beautiful. Have you ever heard of Judy Chicago? No, of course you haven't. You know why? Because she's a she. And this is one of the saddest stories in current American history, I think. Judy Chicago was an American artist. And, every artist that ever existed, there's all this stuff about how difficult and how hard to work with and blah, blah, blah. So I don't even want to go there. But her vision of art was so interesting. She did ceramics. And she had this installation that she never could get displayed because it was so big. No art museum would take it because, you know, she was a girl. So this is called Judy Chicago's Dinner Party. And I, you know, stumbled on a video at the library about it years ago. I could not believe it. I'd never heard of it. I was just astounded. So what she did is she created in ceramics a triangular shaped table, like hollow, just, you know, like that. Okay. And I don't remember how many place settings there were, but equidistant along the three legs of this triangular shaped table were place settings for famous women in history. And each place setting, she created the dishes and, you know, that stuff. And she hired craftswomen to do the cloth, the placemat, the undercloth. Yeah. So for Sacagawea, now her art tends to be a little Georgia O'Keeffe-ish.
Okay.
So these dishes were very, you know, floral, you know what I'm talking about. And underneath, she hired a native woman to get a deer hide and to treat it the way it would have been done in the time of Sacagawea. And you know, they actually chewed the hide to soften. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it that's gross and stuff. But then it had hand embroidery with actual plant dyed quills and just original, right? Emily Dickinson. The plate was like pieces of lace, you know, just standing up, like kind of like if you unfolded it in a circle and it stood up, you know, pieces of lace. And the tablecloth was the runner, was decorated by hand with ribbon embroidery, which was the popular thing for young women to do during the time of Emily Dickinson. And what it is like all these flowers and this beautiful elaborate thing, but it's done with ribbons and special knots, and it's just exquisitely beautiful. So she did this for all these women in history, Hypatia and Madame Curie, and just, you know, you name it. But it's in moldering somewhere in boxes. I know. There's a great documentary about it.
I have it written down because I'm curious about
called
that.
Judy Chicago's Dinner Party, and it's a fabulous documentary. Yeah, really interesting.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
I don't remember what the angst was. There was some sort of kind of personal tensions and disagreements and stuff that went on that colored the work. I think like all artists, she was a bit obsessive, and, you know.
Well, yeah, okay.
I can't draw, so mad respect.
Yes. Well, and I think part of it is it's like what we were talking about. You have to show up at the page. You have to show up at the canvas in order to create. And a lot of times when people are struggling for various reasons, if we do something and we create something, even if it's small, we crochet, we cook, we draw, we doodle, we play
garden,
we garden, that can sometimes help us to that can help us find a balance with things.
Well, you know, I hate to use the word hobby because that's sort of dismissive. It kind of minimizes it. Creative endeavors, let's put it that way, are really therapeutic. And you know, they've done studies. Knitting puts you into a meditative state, literally. Same brainwaves, right? I see my son-in-law. He's an artist. I don't know how he got stuck in our crazy family, but he's this quiet, sensitive artist, and he paints. He does these gigantic paintings, and I mean, he doesn't do it for a living yet. He's worked at it for a very long time. He does graphic design, commercial graphic design for this company.
Mhm.
Designs their labels and their ads and stuff.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
he struggles constantly because he has small children. His life is a constant struggle for space and time for his art. I see what he goes through. He has to be so disciplined. I also see that he can't help it. It's this urge from within, and he has to do it. And fortunately, my daughter understands that. She's a dancer and she understands that sort of thing. But yeah, I know. I have a daughter who dances. I can hardly walk across the room. It skips a generation, Gerald. To my great shame, when she was little and she was flitting about on the stage, I was like, oh my God.
All right. So it does, but you appreciate it.
Oh, there's nothing more humbling than children. I'll tell you what. Oh, but you wouldn't know because you were the chosen youngest child. So
Well, and I also don't have any children.
Yes, I understand that entirely. Because if you did, then you would not be the youngest child anymore.
No, well, anyhow. Yeah, immaculate conception.
Well, no, there are ways. I mean, come on.
There are ways. Yes,
there are ways. Yes, there are. But probably can't talk about that anymore.
I know not of what you speak.
Okay. So, listen, having children is not the only be all and end all. Now, you guys, have you been able to travel?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit? Yeah. When you have kids, it's like your feet have been nailed to the ground.
Well, yes. And my father was an amateur radio operator, a ham radio operator. And so I was fascinated to find out, because we might go on a vacation in the summer and basically we would go to a ham gathering, an amateur radio gathering.
Picture all these legs of ham,
Yeah, totally. But Helen, it was so funny. It was like, it wasn't until I was in like high school that I discovered that a lot of people, it wasn't their experience to go to a campground to spend 3 days hanging out and doing stuff while your parents were doing stuff with other amateur radio operators, and I'm like, okay. And part of me now as an adult says, well, y'all missed out.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. My vacations as a child were spent watching my father snoring on the couch in his underwear.
While you were reading.
Yeah, I go back to school and we had a wonderful time in the Virgin Islands, and I'm like, oh my God. But I never felt like I never felt deprived. I felt fascinated. It was like being a sociologist and studying just a completely different group of people, which it really, really kind of was. Yeah, it's interesting. My husband's family would go, like they all were required to learn how to swim. With us, it was, go in the ocean, and if you don't die, I guess you know how to swim. But I mean, they took formal lessons, and then on vacations, they would go do, see, I don't even have the vocabulary for it. When you get dragged behind a boat,
Skiing.
Water skiing. Yeah. And they were all avid water skiers, which is just foreign to me.
Yeah. It's all right. I turned out okay. I mean, you turned out okay.
Well, are we changing the subject?
No, I was just saying, we didn't get to water ski and we didn't get formal lessons to swim. We're okay.
Yeah. I know. I learned how to swim by not drowning. No, I'm totally serious. We would go.
I believe you, yeah.
By body
Yeah.
surfing in the Pacific Ocean, and nobody fussed over could we swim or not. You just struggled to the shore. I think about that now, and I'm kind of horrified. But
Yeah.
60s and 70s, that's kind of how children were raised.
Yeah.
We leave the house in the summertime. We'd leave the house on our bicycles at a decent hour. I was not an early riser, 10 o'clock in the morning, and we'd come back when it got dark.
Yep. Come back for dinner.
Parents had no idea where we were,
Yeah.
who we were with. It is kind of horrifying.
Yeah. So I have a question to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
You are reading some books because you're doing your Saturday shows about what's that officially called? It's like I want to call it a book discussion, but I
usually say it's our Saturday book.
It's the Saturday book, and
yeah.
you're I appreciate you doing that because we're all not reading the same books, and that's okay. But you're doing that, and which one are you reading now? May I is this top secret? Have I just
No, because I've already done the first 2 videos of it.
Okay.
This is a fabulous book, and if you see it and you like the notion of it, I recommend this book. Check this out. Oh, there. Look how many pages. Almost 800 pages.
It's a good one. Yeah.
And there's a huge bibliography, and it's in tiny print, top of the page to the bottom. I mean, it is so well researched. It's so interesting. The guy who wrote this, the father of the young woman who wrote the book on Dorothy Kilgallen that I covered. And she told me at the time, my dad's writing a book about Marilyn Monroe. And she knows this. I told her, okay, well, when he's done, let me know and I'll read it. And if I like it, maybe he'll come talk. And I frankly have never been fascinated by Marilyn Monroe. I mean, I just had no opinion, I know people adore her, and just I didn't dislike her. I just nothing,
Yeah.
Oh my God, what an interesting person.
Mm-hmm.
Such an interesting person. Nothing like the phony persona. She wasn't a bimbo. She wasn't a dumb blonde. She wasn't emotionally disturbed. She wasn't a drug addict, although she may have had a little bit. But she was not what everybody said about her. That's the common narrative. Mm-hmm. And it just shows you how we can be manipulated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And isn't Marilyn Monroe one of the first people to have a colored performer sing in their nightclub or something like that? Or am I thinking somebody else? Because I think she crossed. She
was very close friends with Dorothy Dandridge.
Yes.
And Dorothy Dandridge was an African-American woman who was a singer and an actress. Yeah. I started out young, and she and Dorothy Dandridge and Ava Gardner were like best friends. And they would go out together at night, and because they were the only 2 white women who would spend time with this young woman because people are so screwed up, And yeah, she was completely without guile. She was the kind of person that she went into every encounter thinking the best, expecting the best, wanting only to treat people well and not hurt them.
I like that.
And what struck me about this book, and I'm about 150 pages in, every single person in her life that met her, including the doctor who did her surgery, including the chauffeur who drove her wherever, every single one of them became friends with her and stayed friends with her for the rest of her life. It almost got tedious. I started joking about it when I made the video, and let's all say it together. They remained friends to the end of her life. She just had a knack for bonding with people. She had such a pure heart, and she had a hideous childhood.
Yeah.
Let me show you a picture of her as an 8-year-old after, try to think of the words, the kind of thing that happens to little girls in foster care.
Okay.
Her mother was mentally unwell.
Okay.
Her mother and her grandmother tried to
Okay.
her.
Uh-huh.
Look at this child's face and tell me this is not the face of a suffering child.
Oh man, yeah.
Isn't that the saddest picture you've ever
Yes.
seen?
Wow.
And this is what happens after therapy and the fulfillment of artistic desires. She actually was described by directors and producers and other stars, other actors, as very possibly the greatest dramatic actress of our time, and never got credit for it.
No.
So I've been watching her movies.
Oh, I love it.
I've seen some of them, when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, she's just never been on my radar. So I just watched one called Niagara.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be a noir film, about, I was okay. It wasn't that great. She was good in it. The movie itself was kind of stupid. I'm going to watch Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. I think she was, maybe I'm getting that wrong, but I think she was in that. She was in Bus Stop.
Okay.
And Bus Stop, I've seen that years ago and I really didn't like it. It's based on a play. And I'm not crazy about movies that are based on plays. The pacing is wrong. It's very hard to take a play and make it a movie. But this was a William Ing. Is that how you pronounce his name? Inge? Very famous playwright.
Yes.
And it's about people on a bus who meet and just the interactions, what happens. And she plays this down on her luck young woman trying to make a go of singing from pillar to post. And she's just, what you would imagine. It's very sad. But apparently she got a Golden Globe nomination for it and
wow,
should have gotten an Academy Award. I mean, there was a lot of talk about this was an unbelievable performance, but the studio wouldn't let them because she had a fight with the studio. She didn't like being given all the dumb blonde roles because she was not a dumb blonde. And so she broke her contract with Fox. She went to New York and she started her own production company.
Good for her.
And she held out until they begged her to come back because she was the biggest box office star. They begged her to come back. And when she came back, she negotiated a contract where she got full creative control and increased her pay by 500%.
Good. Good.
So, but then she was vulnerable to manipulation because she was married to Joe DiMaggio. An insecure creep. And then she was married to Arthur Miller, another controlling, insecure creep, allegedly. And she was prey to that.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating when, like you were saying, like what good therapy does for someone. And it allows them to enter into new experiences with a sense of curiosity and an open heart and the desired best outcome. It's just like, oh, this is going to be great. And lo and behold, I think stuff like that follows people around.
There's no doubt about it. That kind of childhood trauma, if you don't address it, it raises its ugly head eventually at some point in your life. And she tried very hard. Unfortunately, she got into the spider web of a very manipulative psychiatrist who wanted the fame and fortune.
Gross.
And she was just used. You know, there are people who see it coming, you know, they see a victim coming. And she was used by a variety of different people, manipulated. They wanted the proximity to fame. They wanted the opportunity to make money off of her. Like Lee Strasberg, the acting guy from the Actors Studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, who thought he knew everything about making movies and acting. And he and his wife kind of were like Black Widow spiders in her life. It was terrible.
Gross.
Well, she had nothing security, you know. She
Yeah.
fell for it. But, you know, she got stalked and abused and mistreated. She had a terrible habit of getting involved with men who were controlling. And then there's the whole question of what happened to her at the end. You know, she had that relationship with, I'm really reluctant to even talk about this too much now, given the family connections, you know.
Yes. Okay.
But there's real good reason to believe that there was some sort of mishigosh. And what happened to her is very interesting. So I'm trying to figure out a way to talk about it without talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm glad. And so how many shows are you expecting to do on that? I mean, it's a thorough book. And
Yeah, I may start throwing a few videos in the middle of the week.
okay.
Because if I only do, I used to do hour after hour after hour, and I quickly realized it was onerous for people. It was, you know, too much. So I kind of backed off, and I've been doing like 2 roughly hour-long videos a week on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But I might throw a few more in because, like I said, there's about 760, almost 800 pages. Well, I'm doing about 25 pages an hour. So, so we'll talk in 3 years.
Well, I was just curious because I think it's something that you know, people who are subscribed to your channel, this is a great opportunity to find out something that is well researched, because I think you research things appropriately. My experience with you has been you're well researched and you're intelligent and you're articulate. So there you go. I said it.
Thanks. Well, thank you. I can't take credit. I didn't research this book. I'm just telling you what the book says. But boy, oh boy, am I ever impressed. Larry Jordan is the name of the author, and he was Sarah Jordan Heinz, the author of the Dorothy Kilgallen book. He's her father. And like Dorothy Kilgallen and her father, Sarah and her father are both in the newspaper business together.
Oh, okay.
So interesting. Yeah. But this has been his little labor of love. And boy, oh boy, does he do a good job. And I've got a couple of other books up my sleeve. I've been trying to find safe topics.
Yes.
So kind of veering a little bit towards, you know, true crime in Hollywood. And I think we all need a little escapism right now. I actually think it's really appropriate. Humor is very healing.
Yes.
I'm trying to go in that direction for a while.
Yes. Yep.
Until we see how things play out.
Yeah.
Well, I should let you go. I should release you into the wild. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, it's
I'm sorry.
It's late here, and I'm
sorry.
going to. I'm not.
Oh, thank you, Gerald.
But my question is, am I going to be able to get you back on my channel?
Well, we'll have to talk about this. I know. You know, this has been really difficult.
Or if I can invite myself back here, we've got lots of things we can talk about.
I would be thrilled to have you back. I don't want to wear you out.
You're not wearing me out.
We don't want the blush to be off the rose, Gerald.
There you go. There you go. Because, you know, I still have these 9 little cards that I put topics on.
Okay.
So I could, for the next one, I could come up with 9 different things.
Oh, I would love that. That would be so much fun. Well, for an unscripted attempt at a conversation going into this today, we had zero idea of what we were going to talk about and no topics available to us at the tip of our fingers. And lo and behold, we haven't shut up. It's just
welcome to a show with Irish Granny Helen and Gerald. This is what happens. I hope you've hydrated yourself, people.
I just defy you to get us to shut up.
Oldest and the youngest.
That's true. All right. And I have to school you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And we will do this again soon. We'll talk here in a minute.
Yes. Yep.
And tell Jeffrey I said sorry. I'm leaving now. So thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you have kind of fun things you'd like Gerald and me to talk about, or you'd like me to research, let me know. I'm grasping for subject matter, So thank you very much. Slán go fóill. Sláinte.